Well, hi, Mark. Thanks for joining me today to have this conversation about associations and how they're marketing themselves today. What's the state of the association world? What can we do better around content? And what does it all mean, really?
Just a lot of small stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell people what you do day to day and what your entry point is into associations. And then, just from that perspective, what's going on right now and what do they need to sort of work on? We'll talk about what they're doing well in a minute, but what do we need? What do they need to work on from where you're sitting?
Sure. So I have been a writer for associations now, which is published by ASAE for coming on 15, 16 odd years now. And one nice thing about my job and one terrifying thing about my job is that it's my responsibility to pay attention to what's happening in membership, what is happening in marketing, what is happening in events and technology. And to answer your question about what's happening now, I think the word that comes up in any of those verticals, buckets, whatever you want to call them, is disruption. Certainly, the Trump administration has forced a lot of associations to rethink how they might be looking at federal funding, if that is a key part of what they do. If you're a medical society, lots of elements are being rewritten. There's a lot of anxiety about meetings and travel and what does this mean for international meeting attendees. So that's touching everything. Plus, on top of that, all sorts of economic anxiety that is prompting a lot of associations to think about, will our members stay? What is going to keep them? Uh, where is the pipeline of new members coming? How are we going to
Mhm.
serve our members in, the big word around this is polycrisis, but, I think every association is at the moment having to think about what is the past year doing to us.
Yeah. Yeah. Just that little thing.
Mhm. No biggie.
Yeah. No biggie. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks for framing that up. So there's a lot on associations' minds right now. And from my opinion, you really do keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening out there across a wide swath, whether it's technology, culture, advocacy, whatever it is. You write about a lot of that. And um, so what's happening right correctly? What's an example of even maybe association, if you have one, of you're like, this group really gets it, or they did this project and that really made a lot of sense.
I I think the common thread for associations that are feeling a little bit more confident now are the ones that have gone through the process of scenario planning and foresight. And I don't love the term seeing around corners because that's not something anybody human can do. But the associations that have stood up their boards and other volunteer groups to say, okay, this is where we are. What are the consequences of that? And what are the things that we are going to provide to our members and customers in response to that? For instance, I've talked with Larry Sloan, who's the CEO of the American Industrial Hygiene Association, and they knew that one of the key government agencies that touches on the work that they do was going to reduce its staffing by around 90%. So, what they were trying to do in response is, obviously there's an advocacy piece of that. You want to
Yeah.
make the case for, you know, the health and safety of our country depends on these agencies, but
Yeah.
you also have to assume, what if that doesn't happen? What if that message doesn't resonate? And so what they're trying to do is look for ways to create the funding on their own, to look for new avenues of revenue. So I think the thing that defines a lot of associations is not sitting still, not getting into panic mode, and trying to look for what kind of solutions can we stand up on our own. And I will say that, maybe 10 years ago, you might have said that associations are slow moving ships and are not capable of doing this without, like, a 3-year window. But
Yeah.
the pandemic, if there's a positive to be found in that, you know, stomped on the accelerator a little bit. A lot of associations now realize that, yeah, we not only should we do things more quickly, but we can do things more quickly. We have evidence of that from 5 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a silver lining to it. It sort of forced us to accelerate in a way that maybe we thought, associations thought they weren't prepared to do. Turns out you
Right.
can, and now let's bring that to our culture. Yeah. I think it's sort of like there's a cost to waiting, right?
Yeah.
And when it came to the pandemic, you couldn't wait. And
Right.
now I think maybe people do understand that. It's sort of the button to push to say there is a cost to wait. When it comes to AI, you've
Right.
written various things on there. I mean, just, what's your feeling in the world of AI? Like, do you feel like the association market as a whole is accepting of it? And
Hmm.
how are they moving forward with it from where you're looking at it?
I think it really depends from association to association. I think there are plenty of examples in the legal and medical field where associations understand how AI is impacting its members and looking for ways to build efficiency. I think we've gotten a little bit out of the panic mode that might have obtained 3 years ago, where the main concern was, oh, this is going to eradicate jobs wholesale. And I think now the question is going to be, how can we make sure that our members, A, understand what AI brings to the table, B, what kind of ethical and legal boundaries are
Hmm.
important to think about? Because the biggest challenge now is, as AI becomes all pervasive, it becomes all pervasive in asynchronous sort of ways. I mean, think about like within the staff of an association, uh, the marketing department may be very well schooled in AI, and the IT department may be very well schooled in AI, but it may not be as effective in the customer service side of things. It may not be as helpful in the customer side of things. So I think associations are just starting to get around the idea of a unitary policy for how they use AI themselves and how they can best guide their members around it as well.
So good. Yes. Well said. Well said. I think that'll resonate with a lot of folks. You talked about marketing, so let's kind of delve further into what associations are doing now, around their marketing. The word that, member engagement is such I mean, like you know, what is member engagement really? You
Yep.
know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so can you just talk about that a little bit? I mean, how do you define it? What have you seen? What associations have you seen do something well that seem to create that, if you will? Are there ways to
Mm-hmm.
measure it? Like, just talk through
Right.
that.
I'm not sure if I can think of an example of an association that like has cracked the code, which is not to say that people haven't, but I think
Yeah.
part of the challenge that associations are facing is that they are using, this comes out of research that Marketing General International has done, suggesting that associations are using a kind of an outdated model for
Mm,
what effective marketing might be. And what that means basically is that they are still relying very, very strongly on email as a way to contact and quote unquote engage with their members, even though, as long as I've been in the association space, the number one complaint, and I'm sure you're aware of it too, is you send me too many emails. And
yeah.
also, and more specifically, you are not sending me emails or messages that are relevant to the relationship I want to have with the association. I think, the smarter associations are able to leverage their AMS. They're able to track what their members' purchases are, what they express interest on, what they do when they visit the association's website. But there is still, the email blast mentality assumes that your members have nothing better to do all day than think about, what is my association up to right now? And realistically, it comes up in matters of training. It comes up in matters of pain points on the job. It comes in matters of maybe attending meetings. But I think that a lot of associations aren't necessarily thinking in the context of, what does this individual member need right now? So I'm not a genius at KPIs, but I think the true measure of effectiveness of marketing is, are you delivering the message that speaks to a member need at the moment that they need it?
Love that. Love that. Yeah. And I mean, if you want to, we want to blend in AI, that's a mechanism or that's a tool that can help us understand
Yes.
that a little better, help us personalize a little better. Well, I just want to go to something you said. I mean, you're a content creator, you're a content person, you write compelling copy, you understand the functions of what makes something interesting and compelling for someone to read. So, talking about email marketing and that it's too many emails. And I think you hit the nail on the head by saying it's not about the quantity, it's about the
Mhm.
quality, really. I
Yes.
have
Hmm.
emails that when I get them, they're this long and I read
Yeah.
every word because I'm just like, oh my, give me more.
Right.
And I mean, if we had the silver bullet answer to what I'm about to ask you, we'd write a book and be millionaires. But what in your mind are the kind of things that an association just might be thinking about incorrectly when it comes to email outreach? And then conversely, what's a way to just a simple thing or two to say this is a way you could make that better?
I think that associations have a mindset, and this is because they are always being challenged to, like, we need to stand up new programs, we need to create something new. And so oftentimes what associations will lead with is, here's the new thing. Whereas I think for the members' mentality is more, I have this problem. How are you going to solve this
Mm,
problem? What is my path to recertification? What are you doing about this thing that is happening to our industry? Is anybody in advocacy doing something about this? Why can't I, get my renewal taken care of? Or why is it a hassle to sign up for this event or meeting? Or why can't I find out more about what is happening in my chapter? So I think maybe a lot of marketing needs to be, and it's fine to do that big long email that you might be thrilled about that says everything that you're doing, because nobody wants to be ignorant. But I think that associations maybe need to do a little bit more call to actions, to saying,
mm,
we're doing this thing. We know from our experience that you are interested in this thing because you've bought X book or you attended X webinar. Are you in on this? Are you in on signing this advocacy petition? Are you in on attending this webinar or attending this meeting that is an hour drive from where you're at? Leveraging the information that you have about members and having a clear ask of them and an explanation of the clear benefits. Here's what you're going to get out of this if you participate in this activity, because we are an organization that is looking out for you and we thought of you and we're sending you this. I mean, that may be pie in the sky, and it may be, a challenge for a lot of associations to leverage all the data that they have about their members to do
mhm,
that, but that would be optimal. I mean, associations should present themselves to members as problem solvers as much as possible. I know that associations love to talk about community and belonging, but yeah, and that fits into that bucket. It can't be a vague sort of aura of belonging. It's like, okay, we know you
mhm.
want belonging. This chapter meeting is happening, in 2 weeks. Are you in? That sort of thing, I think, is more effective.
That's great. Yes. Yes. And so you touched on a few things there. One is sort of using the data that you have to focus the kind of communications, understand too where that member segment uh, might be sitting in their career or otherwise. So I love all that. Is it also to say, though, fairly yeah, that associations try to do too much? And let's just keep it an email. I can think of website
Mm-hmm.
home pages too, but we if we get their attention, then we don't want to lose it, and we want to talk about 17 things and just talk about like
Mm-hmm.
one thing versus 17.
Right. And I think the reflex, and this is also coming out of the marketing general research, is that email shouldn't necessarily be the best place for a lot of things. Think of, for example, membership renewal. Associations are not great at using text messaging to reach out to members. But if you know
Yeah,
that you have an engaged member and their renewal is coming up, and they will recognize your acronym when you text them to say, hey, in 60 days, your membership renewal is coming up, or this event is coming up. Nobody likes spam texts any more than they like
yeah,
spam emails, but that may be a little bit more meaningful and direct. I mean, and think also about social media ads. If you really want to promote your
hmm,
upcoming annual conference, that should be an Instagram, link that is following you around the internet, should it not be? Because
yeah,
and should also be maybe perhaps following around people who have identified themselves as having an affinity for the sort of content and the industry and the work that the association conference is speaking to as well. So associations box themselves in when they keep trying to mine the opt-in crowd to do something when they need to be thinking a little bit more broadly about, like, pushing things when you feel confident that there will be a decent response to it, and trying to grow the audience as well. I think a lot of associations are aware that a lot of associations are facing a workforce pipeline problem. They're trying to make sure that they get more people working in their industry. So this is where you start thinking about outreach to college students. Some associations are even looking at high schools these days to appeal to people. Where are there people, and what is your multi-channel approach to attracting those people and informing them that your association exists?
that's great. I love that. I love all of that. Um, and so, God, you touched on so many great points, but let's just get specific for a minute because you're talking about different content types, outreach channels, where are the people? It's all really smart stuff. And but if you had to just prescribe to an association, just think, let's go back to sort of content.
Mm-hmm.
Associations have been doing this for a very long time and they're good at it
Mm-hmm.
and they understand every association isn't challenged around their marketing. I think that's fair to say. Some do it very, very, very well. But for those that are thinking maybe they're smaller, maybe they outsource their marketing to somebody, let's think about those folks. Like, what would you prescribe is right now today, sort of the bare minimum, and maybe there's something in there that they might not think they should do, but email, blog, I don't know, social, like what does that sort of cadence and
Mm-hmm.
system look like?
It's complicated, especially for small staff associations. I think that one thing associations are not as aware of as perhaps they should be is the amount of content that they are already sitting on that is relevant. I think that when you talk about, trying to think of good examples here of what might be useful, but a lot of associations are sitting on blog posts that can be updated, that speak to their
Mhm.
membership, that can be reused, repurposed, fed into quotes, pull quotes for Instagram as well. I mean, so that is, so the burden of always being creating new content shouldn't be as onerous. You can also think about stuff that you're already using. So I think that might be my first recommendation, is just like see what you already have, because I think a lot of uh, associations get a little stuck on the idea of, we should have this and this, but we don't have bandwidth to create it, especially with smaller associations. And think of yourself as a curator as well. This doesn't always have to be created internally. Follow your industry. I mean, spreading the word and communicating to your membership that you are an organization that is on top of things, that how you're not just what is happening in your industry, but how your industry is being perceived, how it is being covered and treated. There are plenty of opportunities for relatively quick response that don't require standing up a full-time content department to manage this.
Yeah, two great points. Really good stuff. And, speaking to what you do, just think about like PR. That's just this lost art, I think, to some. And you kind of sit in that realm a little bit with what you do from a journalist perspective. Tell associations what you could use from them to help do your job better. And it's an opportunity that might be low-hanging fruit that they're missing.
So one thing that I think about in terms of the work that I do is that there's a very wide spread in terms of the depth of content. Excuse me, which is as it should be, because it can be anything from a short tweet to a blog post to a longer, more multi-sourced article to a full-on white paper. And that's because different members may have different needs. It's like, okay, just tell me what the news is, or no, I really want to deep dive into this particular topic. So when I think about what I want to hear from people who are in the PR world and trying to inform me about things, um, I want the quick hit version. I want to say, I want to hear, okay, we as an association are doing X, but I also want the larger context around it. And I think that all falls in the bucket of what problem is this solving? And I think a lot of PR messages that come my way is misses that in
Mm,
some ways. I'll get a lot of messages saying that we are partnering with blank blank and blank and all the industry buzzwords. We are creating new synergies, and we are better empowering our members. Okay, I know from any time I talk with an association CEO or a board chair that this wasn't happening just out of the blue. There was a particular problem. It could be in
mm.
terms of trying to grow your audience, trying to ramp up your advocacy. Well, and that shouldn't be buried. I think that maybe a lot of associations are a little hesitant to talk about that because maybe it feels like it gets into the weeds, or it has a negative valence to it. But for me, I mean, I never assume that associations have it all figured out. And if you are pursuing a new initiative, it's because there's something that requires attention. So tell me, what is the thing that requires attention? What are the pain points that are happening for your people that make this a meaningful story for me to cover?
Yeah, that's great, Mark. Appreciate it. All your insights here today have been just fantastic. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And so let's just, as sort of a wrap up, thinking about the future, I think we all kind of want to have, I don't know
Mhm.
if you have a crystal ball or not, but,
Mhm.
what is the future of marketing and content and just, what you see from where you sit, what they need to be prepared for coming down the road?
I think that, to return to the point that we were making earlier about email, I think that associations need to be thinking beyond email as a way to reach out to their members. And it just may be a matter of piloting it. We're going to see how text messaging sits with our members. If we get a lot of cranky responses, I mean, that's
Hmm.
useful, but it's worth trying. I mean, the barrier to entry at this point is so low that you really have to tell yourself, like, why not try it? I think a lot of associations are really overly fearful of how membership can react. And there are certainly some hot button topics that, require a little bit of care of attention. But, I have been long enough in associations to know that sometimes they apply too many layers to things. That if you there was once upon a time, if I wanted to send out a tweet from the association account, it had to go through three people to send a tweet. And I'm afraid that a lot of associations are kind of still in that mindset because they're worried about, well, what will the stakeholders think? Will somebody be offended? And I think that you kind of have to uh, shrug the chains off a little bit and say,
Mm.
no, we're going to try to see if we can create Instagram ads that follow potential attendees. And we're going to try out text messaging because we know that the open rates for our emails are so crummy that not doing something is, uh, it just doesn't seem wise to sit pat.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. As they're thinking it's strategically about what they need to do, and everyone's thinking like we probably should do something with AI in 2026. Like that just seems like a thing. But just talk just a little bit just about like speed versus quality. And is
Mhm.
there something to be said about moving quickly right now?
Well, I mean, there certainly has to be a certain level of care when we're thinking about AI, about making sure that there is, a human in the loop in the process. I think when I look at, what I've seen about what associations are doing or not doing with AI, they're good at using it for chatbots, they're good for using it for basic customer service responsibilities, they are good at using it for basic ideation around marketing for conferences. They are not as robust at using it for the kind of data analysis that we've been talking about. Can you set up a set of personas that we know about, like emerging members or non-certified members or people on the West Coast, or name your member group, and try to use AI to more quickly establish an understanding of who those member or potential member or customer groups are, so that we can better serve them, so that we can develop the marketing tools, and understanding what are the social media tools that they use, what are the how do they want to be spoken to, how do they want to hear from us, and what they want to hear about. I think that's the opportunity to start doing more sophisticated things at speed with the data that an association has, obviously being mindful of, there are all sorts of people who are attending to the matter of being careful with member data, but
Yeah.
that's the opportunity here. That's the thing that you can do relatively quickly now. Something that would have required, you know, a much bigger lift half a decade ago is something that could be something that only requires a matter of a few weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that's so insightful. And great stuff. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking some time to talk today. I think any association that's listening got a lot out of this. And you, like I said at the top, you really do have your finger on the pulse of what's happening just by the very nature of how you sit in the association world. You see so much, the good stuff too, and
Sure.
just super insightful to share your background and your experience with everybody today. So appreciate that, Mark. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Chris.